The neon-lit bar on Station Epsilon hummed with the quiet chatter of a dozen species. But journalist Kixra could only focus on one table. The grizzled curve veteran sat hunched over his drink, compound eyes reflecting the swirling colours of the nebula visible through the viewport. "You want the real story?" His mandibles clacked sharply. "Fine, but don't expect some sanitized military briefing." Kix's recording device pulsed softly. "Just tell me what happened. Why did the Empire fall to the humans?" The veteran's chittering laugh echoed. "We didn't fall to them. We were dismantled by them. There's a difference." He drained his glass. "You know what our biggest mistake was? We assumed warfare was a science. Equations, probabilities, force multiplication. We had it all calculated. And the humans made it an art." He gestured sharply. "While we perfected energy shields and plasma arrays, they were still throwing rocks at each other. Sophisticated rocks, mind you. Tungsten telephone poles dropped from orbit. They called them rods from God. Pure kinetic energy. No energy signature to track. No radiation to detect. Just gravity and death." Kix's antenna twitched. "But surely superior technology." "Technology?" The veteran slammed his appendage on the table. "Let me tell you about the Battle of Kra. We had them cornered. Our ships, beautiful vessels with perfect symmetry. Optimized shield harmonics. Their ships, brutal chunks of metal with engines strapped on. Over-engineered disasters that looked like they'd been assembled by a crew with more enthusiasm than sense." He leaned forward. "We fired everything. Our weapons tore through their initial formations. Victory protocols were already uploading. Then you know what those maniacs did? What? They detonated their own antimatter containment, created an electromagnetic storm that fried both fleets. Then, while we were floating dead in space, they came at us with chemical rockets and thermal lancers, not plasma cutters, literal hot metal. And they were singing while they cut through our hulls." Kix's mandibles trembled. "That's tactically insane. That's human." The veteran signaled for another drink. "They don't think like us. We see a battlefield and calculate optimal outcomes. They see a battlefield and imagine possibilities. Every human grows up playing war games. Capture the flag, paintball, tactical simulations. Their civilians spend more time thinking about combat scenarios than our military me's." "But how does that translate to victory?" he interrupted. "Because they weaponize everything, not just guns and ships. Information, psychology, culture. They studied us, really studied us. Learned our myths, our fears, our social structures. Then they used it against us." The veteran's voice dropped. "By the war's end, we had battalions surrendering based on rumors. Stories that humans could smell fear, that they'd grant mercy to those who didn't resist. Complete fabrication, but it worked. That's the thing about humans. They don't care if something is elegant or logical. They care if it's effective." Kix processed this. "So, they won through deception. They won because they enjoy it." The veteran's eyes glinted. "Not the killing, though some do, and those ones are terrifying. No, they enjoy the challenge, the puzzle. Every battle is a problem to solve, and they're exceptional problem solvers." "What happened after the war?" The veteran chittered darkly. "They invited our surviving commanders to a paintball tournament, said it would build post-war relations. So there we were, the finest military minds of the Empire, getting pelted with colored dye by laughing humans who treated combat like a carnival game." He stood, swaying slightly. "You want to know why we lost? Because we were fighting soldiers. They were fighting warriors. We fought with science. They fought with art. We fought because we had to. They fought because they'd been preparing their entire lives for exactly this moment. As the veteran stumbled toward the exit, he paused. Oh, and Kikshra, if you ever find yourself facing a human in combat, surrender immediately. Because if you don't, they'll take your weapons, figure out how they work, improve them, and use them against you, and they'll be humming a cheerful tune the entire time. Kix was reviewing her notes when a human in a crisp military uniform slid onto the bar stool beside her. The abundance of medals and ribbons seemed excessive to her minimalist sensibilities. Your Kerr friend told you about the war, the human said, not bothering with introductions, but he missed the best parts. She turned, antennae alert. You fought too young. He ordered something called whiskey, but I've studied it extensively. Required curriculum now. How to end an interstellar war before it starts. He smiled, showing teeth. Kixra had learned this wasn't a threat display, but instinct still made her wary. The veteran said, humans are gods of war. The officer nodded. He's not wrong. But do you know what we see when we look at the stars? He gestured to the viewport. Most species see resources, territory, strategic positions. We see every space battle we've ever imagined, every heroic last stand we've ever written about, every tactical scenario we've gamed out in fiction. That seems excessive. That's preparation. He sipped his drink. By the time we met the Kerr, we'd already fought 10,000 different versions of that war in simulations, games, stories. We'd explored every possibility, tested every theory, failed in every conceivable way, all safely in fiction. Kik's recording device pulsed. So, you were prepared for anything. Not anything, everything. He set down his glass. Here's what your veteran didn't tell you. We don't actually want to fight. Our greatest heroes aren't the ones who win wars. They're the ones who prevent them. Diplomat, peacekeepers, leaders who maintain stability. Then why all the preparation? Because knowing how to fight means knowing when not to fight. The human's expression grew serious. We study warfare obsessively because we understand its cost. Every human warrior carries the weight of history. Thousands of years of conflict, of lessons learned in blood. That knowledge makes us better at avoiding unnecessary wars. He stood, straightening his uniform. That's why we're here now, sharing drinks instead of exchanging fire. We excel at warfare, yes, but we're even better at finding reasons not to wage it. As he walked away, Kixra heard his companions begin another song. Something about 99 bottles. She was beginning to understand. That human singing served a purpose beyond entertainment. It was bonding, memory, culture, all woven together. The bar's atmosphere shifted instantly. The singing stopped. Every human head turned toward the news broadcast. Breaking pirate attack on refugee transport near Carina Nebula. Multiple casualties. Children among the victims. Kix watched the transformation with mounting unease. The human's casual demeanor evaporated, replaced by something cold and purposeful. This, she realized, was what the veteran had tried to warn her about. A human woman in civilian clothes materialized at her table, moving with unmistakable military precision. You want to understand us? Her voice was quiet, controlled. Watch what happens next. I don't understand. Those pirates just crossed a line. The woman's eyes were ice. There are rules to warfare, codes of conduct, laws of engagement, but some rules aren't written in treaties. They're written in our DNA. On the view screen, reports flooded in. Naval, vessels changing course. Not just human ships. Vessels from every major power in the sector converging on the Carina Nebula. How are you mobilizing so many allies? Kixra asked. Because we taught them our methods, shared our intelligence, trained alongside them. After the war, we could have hoarded our tactical knowledge. Instead, we built a network. Because the strongest warrior isn't the one with the biggest guns. It's the one with the most people willing to stand beside them. The officer from earlier appeared. Task. Force assembled. We're seeing similar responses in 3 other sectors. They were being watched. The woman said Kixtra's antenna twitched. You knew about these pirates. 3 years ago, they hit another refugee ship. Couldn't prove it then, but we watched, waited, built our case. And now they've given us justification. On screen, ships from a dozen species executed maneuvers in perfect synchronization, cutting off escape routes, isolating pirate vessels with surgical precision. How are they coordinating so seamlessly? Kix breathed. Because we trained them, the officer said. After the war, we shared our tactical doctrines. Not everything. We're not naive, but enough to build trust. The woman stood. Trust is a weapon more powerful than any dreadnought. That's what your veteran didn't fully grasp. We're not just good at warfare, we're exceptional at building coalitions. Within hours, the pirates were cornered. The refugee ship was secure, and then to Kixra's astonishment, the combined fleet offered terms of surrender. You're giving them mercy, she asked. Rule 1 of human warfare, the woman said. Always offer an exit. The goal isn't to destroy your enemy, it's to ensure they never want to fight you again. Sometimes the best way to do that is showing mercy when you have every right not to. Most pirate ships surrendered. A few resisted. None escaped. The woman straightened her civilian jacket, and Kixtra suddenly understood. The clothes might be civilian, but this was clearly an admiral. One final lesson about humans, the admiral said. We're not just good at fighting wars, we're excellent at ending them. Sometimes with violence, sometimes with mercy, always with purpose. Later that evening, Kixra noticed students gathering around an elderly human, wearing a weathered ceremonial uniform. His medals were tarnished with age. Speaking of conflicts long past, is it true about the memorial? A young alien asked. The old veteran's eyes crinkled. You mean the wall? Yes, it's real. Black stone polished like a mirror. Tens of thousands of names carved into it. Why remember the dead this way? A Sententon student asked. Because every name tells a story. The veteran pulled out a metal object on a chain. This belonged to my grandfather. World War II. When I was young, he didn't tell me about victories. He told me about friends he lost, horrors he witnessed, the true cost of war. The admiral from earlier joined them. That's what makes us different. Most species build monuments to victories. We build monuments to costs, to sacrifices, to mistakes. But why? Another student pressed. Because that's how you learn, the admiral replied. Every name on that wall is a lesson. Every memorial is a reminder. Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. The old veteran nodded. When humans go to war, we don't just carry weapons. We carry memories, thousands of years of them. Stories of courage and failure, triumph and tragedy. It makes us better warriors because we understand what warfare truly costs. Kix's antenna twitched with realization. That's why the response to the pirates was so swift. You remembered. Exactly. The admiral said. When we saw that refugee ship attacked, we didn't just see a current event. We saw every refugee ship ever attacked. Every innocent harmed. Every time someone thought they could prey on the weak. We remember it all. The veteran held up his grandfather's dog tags. We don't fight because we love war. We fight because we remember what happens when good people do nothing and the mercy shown to the pirates. A student asked. We also remember what happens when victory becomes vengeance. The admiral said softly. When justice becomes cruelty, we remember because if we forget, we risk becoming what we fight against. On the view screen, The last pirate ships docked at the starbase. The refugee ship's passengers received care from a multi-ACES medical team. The old veterans stood slowly. Being gods of war isn't about fighting ability. It's about remembering why we fight, when to fight, and crucially, when not to. We carry every lesson, every sacrifice that came before. That understanding makes us both terrible in battle and merciful in victory. Behind them, the humans began singing again. A slow, mournful melody about poppies growing in fields where soldiers had fallen. Kixra looked at her notes, then at the stars. She finally understood. Humans weren't gods of war simply because of their tactical brilliance or technological adaptability. They were gods of war because they never forgot. Not the victories, not the defeats, not the cost. Every battle was a chapter in an ongoing story. Each warrior, a keeper of collective memory, stretching back millennia. And that memory, that weight of history, made them both the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy and the most committed peacekeepers. The singing continued, washing over the bar like a benediction. Sometimes even gods needed to remember mercy. As Kixra uploaded her story to the Galactic Network that night, she included a human phrase she'd learned, "Lest we forget." 3 words that explained everything. 3 days after publishing her article, Kixra received an unexpected message. The subject line read simply, "You're missing something important." The sender was identified as Dr. Ko Yamamoto, Professor of Strategic Studies at the Terran Military Academy. Intrigued, Kixra agreed to meet at a quieter establishment, a tea house on the station's garden level. Dr. Yamamoto was younger than Kixra expected. Perhaps in her early 40s, by human standards. She wore simple academic robes, but moved with the same purposeful economy as the military personnel Kixra had interviewed. "Your article was well researched," Dr. Yamamoto said, pouring tea with precise movements. The veteran, the admiral, the historian, they gave you the warrior's perspective, but you're missing the foundation. The foundation? How we teach it. Dr. Yamamoto pulled out a data pad, displaying what appeared to be a children's game. This is called chess. Invented over 1500 years ago, we teach it to children as young as 4 or 5. Kix examined the board with its various pieces. A war game, a strategy game. Each piece moves differently, has different capabilities, different values. The goal is to trap the opponent's king. But here's what matters. Every human child who plays this learns fundamental concepts: sacrifice positioning, thinking multiple moves ahead, recognizing that sometimes you must lose something valuable to win something greater. She swiped to another image. A playground with children divided into teams. Capture the flag. Team coordination. Defensive positioning. Risk assessment. Humans learn these concepts before they can read complex sentences. Indoctrination. Kixtra's antenna flickered with concern. Education. Dr. Yamamoto corrected gently. But not in the way you think. We're not training soldiers. We're teaching problem solving through competitive frameworks. The martial applications are almost incidental. She pulled up another file, a video game with stunning graphics. This is a civilian entertainment product. Sold millions of copies. Players command armies, manage resources, develop technologies, form alliances. The average human teenager has logged hundreds of hours thinking through strategic scenarios, not for military purposes, for fun. Kix watched footage of players coordinating complex maneuvers. This level of tactical thinking, it's recreational completely. Dr. Yamamoto smiled. By the time a human reaches military age, they've already internalized strategic thinking. They've failed thousands of times in safe environments. They've learned that unconventional solutions often work best. That cooperation multiplies strength. that resources matter, but creativity matters more. She leaned forward. Here's what your article missed. Human warfare doctrine isn't built on military training. It's built on cultural foundation. Every sport we play teaches teamwork and competition. Every strategy game teaches planning and adaptation. Every story we tell explores conflict and resolution. But other species have games and stories not like ours. Dr. Yamamoto's voice grew passionate. We have a saying, all warfare is based on deception. It's from a text written 2,500 years ago. We've been analyzing, systematizing, and teaching warfare for millennia. Not because we love it, but because we recognized early that understanding conflict was essential to survival. She displayed another text, ancient, translated from Old Earth languages. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, Machiavelli, von Moltke. We've built entire philosophical frameworks around warfare. Not just tactics, philosophy. We debate the ethics of war, the morality of violence, the responsibility of power. That seems contradictory. Kixra said, you teach children war games, but also ethics about war. That's exactly the point. Dr. Yamamoto's eyes gleamed. We teach both simultaneously. Every military officer studies philosophy alongside tactics. Every strategy course includes ethics modules. We learn 50 different ways to destroy an enemy and 50 different reasons why we shouldn't. She pulled up footage from the recent pirate incident. Watch this moment carefully. See how the fleet commander hesitates before authorizing weapons free. That's not tactical calculation. That's philosophical consideration. In that 3-second pause, she's weighing proportionality, necessity, potential consequences. Kix watched the footage again, seeing what she'd missed before. She's thinking about whether she should fight at all, even when she has every justification to do so, even when the enemy has shown no mercy, even when her forces are superior. Dr. Yamamoto nodded approvingly. That's what makes us gods of war. Not our weapons or tactics, but our frameworks for deciding when to use them. The professor stood, walking to the garden window. Your article captured what humans do in war. But you didn't explore what we do to prevent ourselves from becoming monsters in the process. Every human warrior carries 2 educations, how to fight and why not to. Kixra's article had spread across the galactic network, generating responses from species she'd never heard of. But one message stood out. A former pirate recently released from the rehabilitation facility. Following the Karina incident, they met in a secured virtual space. The former pirate's identity masked by encryption protocols as part of their plea agreement. You want to know what it's like to fight humans? The synthesized voice carried undertones of trauma. I'll tell you, it's like fighting ghosts who've read your mind. Explain. We had intelligence. Knew their patrol routes, their response times, their standard tactics. Should have been simple. Hit the refugee ship, grab valuables, disappear into the nebula. We'd done it dozens of times. The pirate's avatar shifted uncomfortably, but within minutes of our attack, everything went wrong. Their ships appeared from impossible vectors. It was like they knew our plan before we executed it. Perhaps they intercepted your communications. We thought that too. Went back through every system. Nothing. No breaches, no intercepts. Then one of our techs figured it out. They didn't need to intercept our communications. They'd written our playbook. Kix's antenna twitched in confusion. Humans have this thing, tabletop games, where they simulate different scenarios. Turns out there's one specifically about piracy tactics. Released 30 years ago, millions of players. It explores every possible approach to ship-to-ship raiding. What works? What doesn't? Optimal positioning. Likely responses. The pirate laughed bitterly. Our brilliant tactics. They were scenario 47 in someone's game manual. They'd already played out our attack 1,000,000 times. Already knew the counters. We weren't facing soldiers. We were facing players who'd already beaten our level. That seems impossible. That's humans. They don't just prepare for war. They play at war so extensively that by the time real conflict comes, they've already fought it 1,000 times. Every tactic we tried, they had a counter. Every feint, every maneuver, already familiar to them. The Avatar leaned forward. But here's the truly terrifying part. When they had us cornered, when they could have vaporized us legally and morally, you know what they did? Offered surrender terms. They talked to us, ship to ship, open channel. Their commander, human woman, calm as starlight, explained exactly why we'd lost, walked us through our mistakes like a teacher correcting homework, told us where we'd been predictable, where we'd been sloppy. It was humiliating. Why would they do that? Because they wanted us to understand something. We never stood a chance. Not because we were outgunned, but because we were outthought, outpreared. They wanted us to know that every move we made, they'd seen before. That fighting humans isn't about force. It's about depth of preparation. The pirate's voice dropped. Then they offered rehabilitation instead of incarceration. Education programs, job training. They didn't just defeat us. They gave us a reason to never fight them again. Not through fear, but through respect, obligation. I'm still not sure what to call it, and you accept it. Of course, I accept it because I realized something in that moment. Humans don't just win wars. They win the peace that follows. They're thinking 10 moves ahead, always. The war isn't the end game. The war is just another step in a longer strategy. The pirates stood to leave. Your article asked why humans are gods of war. Here's my answer. Because they've turned warfare into such a comprehensive discipline that by the time you're fighting them, you've already lost. The battle is just formality. The final interview came from an unexpected source. Kix received a message from a human child. At least the profile indicated the sender was only 12 standard years old. The message was articulate, thoughtful, and requested an interview about the educational perspective on your article. Curious, and with parental consent verified, Kixra arranged a secure video call. The child, who introduced herself as Lena, sat in what appeared to be a bedroom filled with books, models of spacecraft, and various games. She wore glasses and had her hair pulled back in a practical style. Ms. Kixra, your article was really interesting, but I think you missed something about how we learn. About war, Lena said with surprising confidence. Oh, what's that? We learn it's sad. The simple statement caught Kixra off guard. Like everyone focuses on how humans are good at fighting, but that's only half of it. We also learn how terrible it is. Lena held up a book. This is required reading in my school. It's about soldiers in World War I. That's an old Earth war. The whole book is about how horrible it was. The fear, the mud, watching friends die, coming home broken. We read it when we're 11. That seems traumatic for someone your age. That's the point. Lena's expression was earnest. We learned that war has costs. Real costs. My teacher says that anyone who studies war seriously learns to hate it. The more you know about it, the more you want to avoid it. She pulled out another book. This one's about a bombing. Cities destroyed. Families killed. We studied it for a month, talked about why it happened, whether it was necessary, what the alternatives might have been. We were supposed to argue both sides. Both sides. Why it was justified and why it wasn't. My teacher said, understanding war means understanding that sometimes there are no good choices, only less terrible ones. Lena's young face showed wisdom beyond her years. She said that's why humans prepare so much. So we have more choices when bad situations happen. Kixra adjusted her position. So you're taught both how to fight and why not to. Exactly. Lena's enthusiasm bubbled over. In my strategy games club, we learned tactics and coordination. But in history class, we learn about war crimes and peace treaties. In literature, we read about soldiers who came home with trauma. In ethics class, we debate when violence is justified. She pulled out a game board, the chess set Dr. Yamamoto had mentioned. My grandfather taught me this. He's a veteran. Every time we play, he tells me stories. Not about winning, about the cost of winning. About friends he lost, decisions he regrets, things he wishes he'd done differently. Doesn't that contradict the warrior training? No, it completes it. Lena leaned forward, suddenly looking much older than 12. Grandfather says the best warrior is the one who knows 100 ways to win a fight and chooses not to fight anyway. He says true strength is knowing when violence is necessary and when it's just wasteful. She gestured to her bookshelf. Half these books are about military strategy. The other half are about peace, diplomacy, and the cost of war. We learn both because you can't really understand one without the other. That's remarkably mature for your age. Lena shrugged. Maybe, but every human kid I know learns this way. We play war games, sure, but we also learn about refugees, and trauma, and rebuilding. We learn that after every war, someone has to pick up the pieces. She held up a final book, a collection of letters from soldiers to their families. My teacher says, these are the most important military documents in human history. Not battle plans or tactical manuals. Letters because they remind us that every soldier is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. So humans teach war. Through the lens of humanity, I guess so. Lena smiled. We learn to fight like warriors, but we also learn to grieve like people. Both things are important. Grandfather says, a warrior who doesn't understand grief will make terrible decisions, and a peacemaker who doesn't understand violence will make naive ones. As the call ended, Kixra sat in silence, processing. The humans' approach to warfare wasn't just about tactical superiority or strategic thinking. It was about maintaining humanity while mastering inhumanity. About understanding violence so thoroughly that you could choose mercy from a position of strength, not weakness. Kixra's follow-up article began with a simple question. What makes humanity the gods of war? The answer she had learned was not simple at all. They are gods of war because they have spent millennia studying conflict. Not just how to wage it, but why it happens, what it costs, and how to prevent it. They are gods of war because they teach their children to be warriors and philosophers simultaneously, to understand both the sword and the pen, to know 100 ways to destroy an enemy and 100 reasons to make them a friend instead. They are gods of war because they remember every battle, every loss, every mistake, every victory bought with blood. They carry the weight of history like armor, letting it guide their decisions. They are gods of war because they prepare obsessively, turning strategy into recreation, making their civilians into unconscious tacticians, ensuring that by the time conflict comes, they have already fought it 1,000 times in simulation. They are gods of war because they build alliances as carefully as they build weapons, understanding that the strongest force in the galaxy is not firepower, but trust. They are gods of war because they show mercy from positions of strength, offering rehabilitation to enemies, choosing the difficult path of peace over the easy path of vengeance. But most importantly, they are gods of war because they have learned to hate it. Every human warrior carries the understanding of war's true cost. They fight not because they love violence, but because they understand that sometimes the only way to protect peace is through the threat of war. They are gods of war because they understand that true mastery of warfare means knowing when not to fight at all. The article concluded with words from Lena, the 12-year-old who had perhaps understood it best. We learned to be strong enough to choose peace. Kixra uploaded the final piece, watching as it spread across the galactic network. Responses flooded in, some skeptical, some frightened, some appreciative. But one response stood out from an address. She recognized the old veteran from the bar. "You understand now," it read. "Welcome to the peace." She looked out at the stars, at the ships moving in patterns of trade and diplomacy, rather than war. Humanity had indeed become gods of war. But like the ancient deities they referenced, they had learned that the greatest power was not in destruction, but in restraint, and perhaps that was the most terrifying thing about them. Not that they were capable of such violence, but that they were capable of such restraint while holding such power. The bar had returned to its normal atmosphere. Humans singing, drinking, playing their endless games. But Kixra heard it differently now. Every song was a memory. Every game was preparation. Every laugh was a choice to be human rather than to be a weapon. She ordered a drink, something human called whiskey, and raised it toward the group of officers in the corner. They noticed. One raised his glass in return. No words needed, just understanding. Gods of war indeed, but gods who chose to walk among mortals as friends, rather than conquerors. That Kixra realized was what made them truly divine. The end.